Many of us who have chronic health conditions often end up moving from one practitioner to another practitioner to another practitioner, from one modality to another modality and another modality in constant search for a solution to your chronic health condition. And we often fall short. We often end up in a situation where the chronic health condition continues. No matter how much effort and dedication we put to trying to resolve this condition, trying to eradicate it from our lives. In today's video, I'm going to share with you something profound, something that was holding me back in my healing, and something which, when I reflect on, I know I am to be blamed for a lot of my conditions. And now I understand why some people who operate in the metaphysical space or in the spiritual aspects of it will often say you are the result of your illness. Now hopefully I don't want people chasing me with pitchforks and pangas after this video, because I'm merely trying to convey a message here, something that helped make a profound difference in my own healing journey, and something which I really needed to bring that conscious awareness and reflect on in order to shift my perspective when it comes to my chronic health condition. Now, some of you may have read the book by Maxwell Maltz, who is this famous plastic surgeon and who authored this book called Psycho-Cybernetics, which talks about how we can change our self-image in a way in which it would allow us to overcome a lot of our self-imposed limitations or the identity which we create for ourselves. And this may be applicable in so many different avenues in our life, so many different aspects in our life. You may have certain goals in your life, however, you create a self-identity that ends up restricting and putting a ceiling on our abilities or potential in life, our potential to achieve certain goals. And the same thing applies to our health. The same thing applies to us overcoming a certain health condition. Something that I often overlooked, and I speak a lot about my healing journey of chronic acid reflux or hypothyroidism on my channel. And one mistake that I made was I often created a self-image that was defined by this very chronic health condition. And even though we may become aware of this and bring conscious attention to the fact that we see ourselves as being defined by this chronic condition, it calls for much more awareness, and it calls for us to go deeper and deeper into the very creation of the self-image. Because if we have this condition for years, and like I've had this condition of chronic acid reflux for decades, and because of this it started to define my very existence, it often ends up sabotaging a lot of the thoughts and image within our subconscious mind. So even though we start working on a lot of the aspects that are somewhat very recognizable to our conscious mind, so for example, thinking thoughts that are no longer synonymous with the identification of a person suffering with chronic acid reflux, there may be a lot of unconscious actions that we take that are reinforcing the very image of somebody who has a chronic health condition. And this was one of the mistakes that I made, because I thought I'm working at this, I'm really trying to shift my image away from a person that is defined by this chronic health condition of chronic acid reflux, and trying to shift it to somebody who is healthy and vibrant, and trying to think of a person who is in the state of health and vibrancy. However, my actions were so sabotaging me. And it doesn't necessarily mean that these actions are wrong or that they are in themselves something that is something that we need to part with. And let me explain, because it requires much more than just eliminating these actions. Sometimes we can't eliminate these actions. It's a shift in the way in which we mentally perceive these actions. And so if you follow me, then you'll know I talk a lot about health. I talk a lot about bringing in more healthy behaviors. And a lot of this has been stuff that I learned along my healing journey. Things that I started to recognize and try and incorporate more healthy habits. But what I never realized is I was constantly creating the self-image of somebody who is defined by this chronic acid reflux image. The person who is defined by this chronic acid reflux. And so I was taking actions that were still subconsciously attached to this image of somebody who suffers from chronic acid reflux. So for example, if I were to be invited to a restaurant or to a certain venue that I know does not cater for my dietary restrictions, which are as a result of me having chronic acid reflux, I would avoid going there. And this action was based on me setting dietary restrictions for myself in order to heal from acid reflux. So it was embedding this image or the self-identity of a person who is struggling with chronic acid reflux. And there wasn't anything wrong with the action itself. The action was fine because I recognized that those weren't really healthy choices. But what it required was for me to shift my perspective of the self-image that was being created by the action, that was reinforcing the image in my subconscious mind of a person who suffers from chronic acid reflux. I needed to bring conscious awareness into the situation so that I take the action of not going because it is not in alignment with somebody who is building up an image or creating an image of themselves that is someone who makes healthy choices, who is vibrant, who is full of vitality. And so that is where this distinction comes in. That is where more conscious awareness comes in. So visualizing myself as a person who is healthy, who is no longer struggling from chronic acid reflux, who is in full vibrancy, who is making healthy choices, and then bring in these actions, but bring in the actions from the perspective of somebody who is healthy. And when that shift can take place, then we can end up reinforcing an image in an integrated way where the actions, the visualizations, the thoughts, they all come together to reinforce this image of somebody who is healthy, who is vibrant. That is the realization that I needed to have in order to shift my identity away from a person who is in a situation of illness into a situation of health and vibrancy. So hopefully this video helped to shed some perspective on how we can shift our image away from something which is so limiting. So before I close, I'd like to leave you with a quotation from this book, Psycho-Cybernetics, that I think had a profound effect on my personal self-image. And the quote is, "Self-image sets the boundaries of individual accomplishment." And essentially what this quotation highlights is that the idea of our own self-image directly influences what we believe we can achieve. If you can shift your image to somebody who easily accomplishes the very goals that you desire, the very health outcomes that you wish to have in your life, you can shift away from the state of debilitation into a state of vibrancy. Now for some, this may be able to pull off miracles where you move from a position where you are completely immobile to a situation where you are now walking and mobile and achieving miraculous results. And for others, it may not have that profound effect. This may be one of those areas that are holding you back in your healing. And even if it may not have that profound effect, it may not have those instant results, it's just another tool in our toolbox of healing to taking us to a state of greater health and greater vibrancy in our life, to taking us to greater levels even from goals outside of our health, to try and create that self-image that we so much desire. Because the world is essentially a mirror of our inner beliefs and the inner reality that we create. And the much more conscious attention and awareness we can bring into it, much more presence of God we can bring within our very own reality, we can start to shift that to become a much more conscious, aware society, something that can profoundly change the world for the better. So if any of this content resonated with you, please do like, share, and subscribe. Please do leave your comments below. I love reading your comments. I love hearing your perspective on some of these messages that I share, and whether any of these have had an effect on you, or whether it makes sense, or I'm talking absolute garbage, or I'm just rambling on here for no apparent reason. But with that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.